Welcome back to the Rise of the Zodiac Book Club. Today our task is to use an incomplete provenance record to teach responsible development history claims.
That sounds like a topic where the exciting answer could arrive faster than the responsible one.
Which is why we will teach three labels: visible, verified fact, interpretation, and speculation. A fact is directly supported by the approved record or source. An interpretation explains a pattern in that evidence. Speculation names a possibility the evidence does not settle.
Our working question is, how much process history can one responsible index record carry?
We will stay inside the episode's approved spoiler ceiling. We will identify only the evidence needed for the lesson, avoid unapproved endings, and preserve every uncertainty that matters.
Development History Index.csv includes our rule for story template.txt.
That is a verified statement, but it still leaves us with a choice about how much weight to put on it.
I'm marking it as fact first. Any claim about meaning goes on a separate line, so confidence cannot leak from the record into the interpretation.
The raw preserves an older Windows path, an approximate date of 2025-05-05, a build stage label of instruction files, and historical/context-only status.
That is a verified statement, but it still leaves us with the choice about how much weight to put on it.
I'm marking it as fact first. Any claim about meaning goes on a separate line, so confidence cannot leak from the record into the interpretation.
The artifact itself was not located in the approved local search, and creator and actual use provenance are unavailable.
That is a verified statement, but it still leaves us with a choice about how much weight to put on it.
I'm marking it as fact first. Any claim about meaning goes on a separate line, so confidence cannot leak from the record into the interpretation.
Put those together, and we have a real evidence for, not a complete theory.
That distinction is generous to the listener. We are not asking anyone to pretend that an index row is a scene, or that one vivid phrase proves a whole cosmology.
It is also generous to the can. We do not make the source say more than it says merely because a larger claim would be convenient.
Let's name the shortcut directly. A suggestive file name is not evidence of a workflow or creative method.
Why is that shortcut so tempting here?
Because recurrence and classification are excellent pattern finders. Once a pattern is visible, the mind wants to make it explanatory. But finding two things together is not the same as proving identity, cause, intention, or universal meaning.
The source hierarchy does not prohibit interpretation. It asks us to disclose the step. If we move from the record contains this to this may suggest that the second statement must be presented as a reading.
So the correction is not to becoming curious. The correction is to make the bridge visible.
And if the bridge is missing,
then the claim remains open. We do not fill the gap with confidence.
Here is a supported reading labeled as interpretation. The index proves that the project cataloged a historical record with those fields.
It is supportable because it stays close to the documented evidence, but it is not promoted to canonical fact.
And a reader can challenge it by returning to the same bounded evidence rather than having to accept our authority.
Here is a supported reading labeled as interpretation. The missing artifact is a positive lesson in why an index entry and an artifact are different authorities.
It is supportable because it stays close to the documented evidence, but it is not promoted to canonical fact.
And a reader can challenge it by returning to the same bounded evidence rather than having to accept our authority.
Notice that the two readings can coexist without becoming a master code.
I would draw the board as evidence on the left, reading on the right, and a question in the middle. What exact feature supports this move? If we cannot answer, the reading needs revision.
That gives disagreement somewhere productive to go. Instead of arguing about who feels right, we can ask which sentence, action, field, or boundary does the work.
Now test the lesson against resistance.
A suggestive file name is not evidence of a workflow or creative method.
That resistance matters because a method that only confirms itself is not analysis. The user really must be able to say what would weaken it.
In this case, the limit is clear. Its contents, author, influence, and actual use remain unknown.
So uncertainty is not a hole in the episode. It is part of the result.
Exactly. We have advanced from an unbounded question to a supported lesson, while leaving the unresolved part in its proper place.
We should also avoid creator intent claims. Story, behavior, and metadata can support observations about the work. They do not automatically tell us why Jeremy made the choice, what private method he used, or which interpretation he prefers.
Let's make this reusable. What should a listener do the next time a pattern appears?
First, identify the stable object, a file name, passage, indexed assignment, date, or artifact record. Second, state only what that object directly establishes. Third, propose a reading with an interpretation label. Fourth, look for a resistant example. Fifth, preserve what remains unknown.
And check the spoiler cost before bringing in more stories.
Yes, more evidence is not automatically better if it exceeds the approved scope. The strongest lesson uses enough evidence to be responsible, not every available detail.
That keeps the conversation educational rather than encyclopedic.
It also prevents metadata from swallowing prose. Indexes help us locate and compare. Stories remain the authority for what happens in the stories.
I like that the method does not demand agreement. Two people can share the evidence floor and still weigh an interpretation differently,
provided they do not relabel preference as fact.
What changed between the beginning of this conversation and now?
The topic became smaller and stronger. We stopped asking for a total explanation and found a bounded claim the sources can actually carry.
We also found the boundary case. That matters because the lesson now tells us where not to use it.
And we preserve the unresolved proposition its contents, author, influence, and actual use remain unknown.
That is the season's larger discipline. Reading across a large canon does not mean making every recurrence identical. It means comparing carefully enough to notice both connection and difference.
Verified fact development history index.csv includes a role for story template.txt.
Supported interpretation. The index proves that the project cataloged a historical record with those fields.
Unresolved or speculative, its contents, author, influence, and actual use remain unknown.
Method: retrieve carefully, compare within scope, label interpretation, test resistance, and leave uncertainty visible.
The satisfying part is that restraint did not make the episode empty. It made the insight traceable.
Evidence gives us a shared starting point. Interpretation gives us room to think. Clear labels keep one from impersonating the other.
And the open question is not discarded. It becomes the next honest question rather than today's invented answer.
That is where we will leave what a story template can and cannot tell us, with a stronger way to read, a bounded conclusion, and canon still intact.